Yeah, very, very cool. So let's talk a little bit more in depth about your Kolbe result. And feel free where you have questions or something's not clear, just jump in and ask me for clarification. Um, so we've talked about your quick start, and we can maybe get back to that. But let's talk about the other three. And actually, I'll start with the pattern for you rather than just looking at individual uh, what we call action modes. Fact finder, follow through, and implementer are the other three. The pattern for you is you don't have any of them where we would describe your strength as being a counteract or kind of resistant strength. There's some people where in one of those action modes, really what they lead with there is pushing back. So for instance, in follow through, which is how we deal with systems and structure, some people really resist structure and bureaucracy and they don't drive everything to completion. They leave kind of some open ended things hanging out there. You might do that. You're a four, so you're more toward that end of the spectrum than somebody who's really systematic and thorough and create, where the first thing they do is, all right, I'm going to put together a plan and a schedule and a calendar and map it all out. You kind of accommodate that. But it's interesting to me, and I think other people who would work with you, is you kind of go with the flow in those other three. You've got your quick start, which is that idea generating, risk taking, hey, let's experiment with stuff and see what happens kind of strength. The other ones you accommodate. So I talked about systems and structure. That's the follow through. Fact finder is how we all deal with gathering and sharing information. So you're toward the end of the spectrum that's more about simplifying and looking at just some key information and data and not going deep, 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 doing more and more research. But you don't push back on the research. You're just like, okay, yeah, got some stuff. That's good. Now let's move forward. You accommodate that. And then the other one, implementer, is how we deal with three-dimensional, tactile, kind of the physical world that we live in. And you also accommodate the need for physical, tangible building kind of solutions. You're not all the way toward that end of the spectrum. You're a little bit more on the envision, imagine side, but you'll kind of bounce back and forth in all of those and not really push back on people who are operating. What we see with this pattern a lot of times is somebody who really operates within a team where you are bringing the team together. You're getting people to work together. Now you've got that initiation and quick start, so that's where you'll really start to step forward. And I've heard some of that already with the way you've described yourself, where yeah, it's changing, and that's how you want a game to play. So it sounds like you're on the right game show because you operate best when things aren't always just a system and a pattern that you can count on and that is going to repeat. You're best when the plan gets messed up, which is what it sounds like they do from episode to episode. You need to find opportunities where you get to do novel things, whether it's you changing the rules or you're just in a situation where those patterns get broken down and where the system either hasn't been created or doesn't need to be followed rigorously all the time. You're going to do well. And most people, because you tend to do better in that, have a sense of accomplishment. It's just easier for you in that kind of situation.
Yeah, I think a really interesting thing, two things that really stuck out there. Well, there was a few. You're right with the chess scenario. Chess ended up getting inevitably pretty boring because they all do the same things, right? Which is why I started leaning more into that kind of trading card environment because there's like there's new sets every 3 months with new envisionments and new cards and new play styles and new ways to play the game, which is really exciting, while also trying to capitalize on the older stuff. The other one is in the game show environment, um, having that ability to. The funniest part about our season right now is I'm being labeled as the head of this big alliance of people, right? Uh, Due to no real fault of my own, I didn't necessarily even know that I was in an alliance, but I think I have that gravitational pull or that bringing togetherness of people where I end up in those roles of people looking to that person to pivot or kind of like it was funny. I almost like to say I have these two conflicting attitudes a lot of the time. One is I'm very confident and driven, and the other is I come off very laissez-faire, like it's not a big deal. And my wife hates it, right? Because I'll be sitting there, the kids will kind of be over there about 10, 20, 25 feet, and I'll be watching them and just kind of like hanging out and watching. And she'll be like, "Are you going to call them? Are you going to go get them?" I'm like, "No, they're fine." Because like I know based on how I've raised them and my ability to get to them at X
Right.
distance, I'm going to be okay. So I'm
Yeah.
relaxed, but I'm also confident. And it creates this really weird, I think, vibe for people to where they interact with me and they like me, but they're also like, I don't know if he's confident or cocky. I don't know if he's, you know, just way overconfident or if he's just lazy. It's like this really like interesting thing where um, that was happening a lot on the floor
Y-
where people were coming to me and rallying to me, and then I was being deemed the head of this alliance simply because people would want to be, I guess, connected or talking to me or interacting with me, which was really interesting. Um, and then yeah, the last one is just in relation to kind of the ideas side of it, and it's so funny when I think of you mentioned marketing is more researching and finding information, and sales is usually more kind of doing or executing on the information you found. And I was thinking about the difference between texting and calling, right? I will text, but if I need something or I want something or I need to figure something out or I need to get some, I will pick up the phone and I will call if I'm nervous, if it's a situation where I don't really know exactly what to say, and I'll just start talking and then I'll pivot off of where that conversation's flowing because I'd rather be in the opportunity to start the conversation and pivot off of it and develop it and move forward in that pivoting role versus trying to research and
Yeah.
delegate and send the
Well, and that
perfect
makes
text
sense to me
message.
because
So
cognitively, with your initiating quick start, you shouldn't be overly scripted, especially because then you add that quick start does need to improvise some and just you get ideas that you didn't know they were great ideas until they came out of your mouth. And you're like, damn, I kind of like that. Um, and also with the follow through and the fact finder to some extent, um, the follow through is the plan. So that would be more the script. Like there's some people, salespeople, where, yeah, they need to know here's where I start. Here's the flow chart, basically. I start here and then it branches. And then depending on their answers, I go this track or that track. That's fine if that's been developed and you can read and go, yeah, yeah, okay, I got the general concept. I get the general concept of what the flow could look like, but I just want to be in it. Yeah, it lets you
and
make
then
it
let
your
me
own
make it
versus
my
other
own.
people who are
Yeah.
like, no, 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 I love that I have this flow chart and the script even, and I'm gonna stick with it, and their problem then is if they get to a branch and that hasn't been written up and anticipated, they're like, oh no, I wasn't ready for that response.
I don't know where
Right.
to
And
go
then
or
that
what to say. I'm
person, what they would
stuck.
do,
And
if they
the
had different strengths than you, they would kind of be stuck, maybe not handle the call really well, but they would then add to that script. And you're like, okay, here's a new thing we need to put on there. Let's train the team so that now everybody's ready for this variable that we weren't expecting. Whereas you'd be less likely to follow that up. You'd kind of do it in the moment. You'd naturally be more inclined to have an answer for it, even if you were just making one up. But then you wouldn't go back and change the whole system necessarily. Another thing that I was struck by in listening to your response is you were talking about the game show and kind of you just became the leader of this alliance apparently. And I think there's probably a lot going on. And, we're talking about your cognitive strengths, your Kolbe result, but undoubtedly there's part of the affective part of you. So some of your people skills are driven by your affect. So, how warm you are with other people, do you give off you can trust me vibes versus do you give off kind of prickly, be wary of me vibes. So I think there are both of those. I think your Colby result, the people side, is, as I was saying earlier, because you accommodate in three of the modes and there's none of them where you really push back and resist, it is more natural for you to be able to work with a broad breadth of people. And also your description of the kids, I think that's probably, in my experience, that sounds like more of an affective thing. And yeah, I mean, I think the conventional wisdom is that there is also a little bit of a gender difference. More guys tend to be more ready to watch their kids doing physical stuff where they might get hurt and just hang back and be like, yeah, they might, but A, I think I can grab them before it's real serious. And B, it's like, yeah, and if it's small, they're going to learn from it and they'll bounce back and, rub some dirt on it, kid. And the moms tend to be a little bit more, oh, hey, let's keep them safe. But I don't know. That's obviously just A, conventional wisdom, and B, one guy's observation. So,
Absolutely. I I have a small question, and I don't know if this is jumping ahead or back, but in the same kind of ideas realm, what I've always found myself personally doing is, to your point, I would come up with what I felt like were really great ideas. Or I don't know if you game or if anyone you know is a gamer, but there's like a game where you would create a character. You would build them, you'd create their race, their class, their size, and you'd do their skill sets, etc. And let's say the game takes 10 hours to complete. I found myself a lot of times getting that character to about hour 4 and then wanting to restart with a completely new character, different race, different build, different style. And then I would get to that character to hour 4 and then I'd want to restart. So I always find myself in these scenarios where I feel like I have these great ideas. I jump in and I start going and I get it going. And then I just kind of like drop it, not necessarily because a new idea comes up, because I get to a point where it's like, okay, like that kind of ran its course, or I, I, I don't know. I've always kind of had that
yeah.
feeling.
And I think in a gaming environment, it's easier to just say, okay, that's fine. Like there's nothing compelling me to need to take it to hour 10 or, do those other steps or add those little incremental changes that are going to get you that much more successful and gain more power, whatever the goal of that game is. I think in a work setting, there are times where you're going to feel more pressure. It's like, well, this project, I can't just drop this project at hour 4, kind of the, you know, metaphorical hour 4. It's like, man, my job is I need to take this further. But what I would say to you is find the opportunity professionally to be in a position, and maybe you already are, where your role is to take things to hour 4 and then to hand it off and to say to other
And then
people in the
hand it off.
professional setting, look,
Yep.
I know this is on the right course. The best use of my time and energy, and it's really your energy is the better way to think. Other people need to see it through. Like the company will be successful when we go all the way and make this great, not just to where I got it, but I need to start on the next thing because the company will do best when you're able to thrive using that. But what we see sometimes in company setups is they don't know this cognitive piece. So they think, okay, well, you were great at getting it this far, so you must be the right person for the next 3 steps. But what's the point of slogging away for those other 6 hours if it's not something you enjoy? You're not particularly great at it. You really love this other part of the game. So I love the fact that you've kind of recognized this. You do it. You're like, yeah, I scrap it. I start over and do the parts that I thrive on. But it's harder sometimes again to set the ego aside.
Yeah. When and what I've found a lot of times too is I get it to that hour 4, and then I don't necessarily have a team or others that I can hand it off to. Um, to your point, I get it to hour 4, and then you've done such a good job to hour 4, just take it to hour 5 and 6, and then it almost like I lose the motivation because I'm not good at that part. Whatever that part is, like I feel like, oh man, I have such a good thing. This is going great. I've got it here. Okay, who can take this? Because I know this is gonna. I need someone that can do this and this and this, and then it's finding those people or those situations where I can get it in those hands. And then if I can't get it in those hands, it's like, okay, well, now I'm stuck because I don't want to push it past hour 4. So then I go back and I start. And in the same vein, sometimes I'll get something to hour 4, and maybe the ego is, if I take this to hour 10, I don't know if it'll be the best or the greatest. So maybe I need to
Maybe,
start over
but
with something
honestly,
else.
I would think that's probably not true for you. I mean, I understand it's like, oh, maybe it's a fear of failure. It's not what I'm hearing. It's not what I would predict from your Colby result. It's much more about, yeah, I might be super successful doing that, but I'm not going to get that sense of joy and accomplishment. So I'm going to go back and start at the beginning. Millions of people have discovered their natural way of taking action. What's yours? Go to Kolbe.com and take the Kolbe A Index to find out.